Hello, everybody. My name is Reginald Bridges, and I am a native of Minden, Louisiana. On today, we honor a great man. On today, we honor a passionate man. On today, we honor a smart man. On today, we honor a dignified man. On today, we honor a man of integrity, a man with class, a man that was on a mission that would not stop regardless of what he was faced with. Today we honor a man of courage. Today we honor a man that simply wanted for everyone to be treated equally. Today we honor the life of the late, great Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Normally, the city of Minden would honor and celebrate Dr. King's life with a sporting event such as a basketball tournament, then a commemorative service. Then that Monday morning, we would have a unity march for whoever wanted to participate, and it would come down Martin Luther King Street, followed by a parade and then a youth rally that would conclude with a motivational speaker. Well, this year's a little different with the pandemic, but just like Dr. King faced issues, adversity, that's not a reason for us to stop, cancel, or postpone his day. If there's a will, there's a way. One thing that I've taken from Dr. King is no matter what you do, be the best at it. So no matter what I do, what I'm involved in, I try to give it my all as Dr. King did. So this year we came up with a symposium. This year's 2021 MLK theme is The Legacy. Dream big, believe big, act big. Here, the people of Minden will share with you the influences that Dr. King had on their lives. These individuals come from different backgrounds, different colors, and of different ages. This is just how the city of Minden chose to share with you and reflect and remember the life of the late, great Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I hope you enjoy.
I am Dr. Nicole Roebuck, Chair of the Music Department and Director of Bands at Grambling State University. It is my honor and pleasure to spend this moment with you at the MLK Symposium. As we reflect on the life of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., it's eye-opening to realize that more than 60 years after the civil rights movement began, that people of color are yet fighting for the right to be viewed equally. Dr. King's I Have a Dream speech wasn't challenging others to disregard color, but transcend it by looking at the content and character of a person instead. In the vision he shared for America, the change he advocated was done with passion and determination. No matter how anxious he was to see that change occur, he understood the delicate balance. It matters how you make it happen. To use this principle in everything that we do as educators and leaders, you can't help but to have respect for the intent behind all that was accomplished and use it at your own disposal. On any given day, you can Google Dr. Martin Luther King and the Civil Rights Movement to see the diligent work that went into raising awareness. With all of the deferred glory given to the movement, very little attention is given to the work of carrying it out. I can only imagine the countless hours of planning, strategizing, and advocating for change with clear intent to do it with dignity. People watch in awe and excitement when they see us march on the field or perform in the concert hall, but they don't see the grind that it took to get there. We all know about the work that happens behind the scenes, and it matters how it's done. It takes discipline and vision to select and arrange music, practice, and perfect it before we present it to the world. When I look deeper into Dr. King's philosophy of treating your fellow man, it always shows me that it matters how we craft our students. The night before he was killed, King was in Memphis supporting striking sanitation workers. He spoke of depositing money into Black-owned bank and buying insurance from Black-owned businesses. Whether it's marching band, wind ensemble, or concert band. We are cultivating our students to become better musicians. What they learn in our programs influences their approach in every area of their lives and equips them to succeed. I was a member of the very ensemble I now get to lead. I know it matters because I'm a direct product of it. Like each of you, I know what it's like to turn the pages of a book or watch a movie scene and stand in awe of people like Harriet Tubman, Rosa Parks, Malcolm X, and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. As a matter of fact, these days, we have more talk celebrating the Black experience than ever. But now it strikes me in a different way. I see something different. It would be impossible to reflect on Dr. King's life without mentioning his leadership. When you look at how he governed himself around others and smiled in the face of adversity, it shows me that it matters how you present yourself in the community. Knowing that Dr. King served until his last breath should inspire us to remain dedicated to what we stand for. Regardless of the institution or organization you represent today, remember why you're doing it. You are building upon a legacy. You never know who might be the next change maker, influencer, or innovator that was empowered because of what they learned from your organization. As I reflect on my career today, the legacy of the Grambling State University world-famed Tiger Marching Band was built on the shoulders of dreamers. Having performed at more Super Bowls than any marching band, traveled internationally to having members perform with Beyonce, I can't be afraid to build upon that legacy. I encourage you to do the same. Don't be afraid to dream big, believe in what you're doing, and act on it to achieve excellence every day. To paraphrase Dr. King, whatever your life's work is, do it well. You should do your job so well that the living, the dead, and the unborn couldn't do it any better.
One day, this nation will rise up, live out the true meaning of its creed.
I'm Benjamin Martin, resident of Minden, Louisiana, former pastor of St. Rest Baptist Church, a schoolmate of Martin Luther King. One of the things that I find interesting these days is that we forget that Martin Luther King was first and foremost a Christian preacher, proclaimer. I would like to say he was a prophet in the mode of Old Testament prophets. He fits that mode in a variety of ways. One way he fits it is that he called the nation to recognize its sins, its errors, its mistakes. Another way he fits in that mode is he was not accepted while he was alive. He was threatened and he was killed. And after he was dead, some folk decided they would revere him while still not listening to what he said. And if we look back at the Old Testament prophets, that's exactly what happened to Amos and Jeremiah. During that day, they were not accepted. But we talk about him as a civil rights worker. He was for justice. He was for social justice. He was for economic justice. He was for religious equality. He was for all mankind and not just one group. I sometimes say he was hated and despised as a civil rights leader, but they didn't go out of their way to do a lot of physical harm. But when he began to deal with economic issues, when he began to pull poor whites and poor blacks together to understand that they both were being oppressed by a power structure, that's when he was assassinated. He preached social justice as Amos preached social justice. He talked about justice in the courts. He talked about justice in the marketplace. He talked about treating people fairly on the job. All of these Amos talked about. And Amos was condemned by the preachers of his community and by the political leaders, just as Martin King was criticized by the religious and political authorities. And even today, the religious authorities, many of them calling themselves evangelicals, are doing everything they can to be anti-Christian in their behavior and supporting a man who has done everything other than what the Bible says a Christian ought to do. If King were here today, he would be speaking out against a lot of religious leaders and political leaders who claim to be Christian, but their rhetoric and their actions are totally unchristian. We need more people who will stand in his shoes and speak the truth, especially to those who claim to be followers of Jesus Christ. If we're going to dream his dream, we have to call out folk in whatever place they are in for their misdeeds, for their misrepresentations, their lies, and their evil deeds. Have a good day.
Hello, my name is Kennedy Dent. I am a sophomore chemical engineering student at Prairie View A&M University. So when I think about Dr. King's persuasive speech, it defines him as a leader. He had a mission, he had a vision, he had a dream to cultivate the United States into a place where people can just be people. We don't have to be separated by color or by race. We can live equally as humans. I strive to be a role model like Dr. King, a leader, and be an inspiration to those who look up to me. My vision to be a role model and an inspiration to younger generations fuels me daily. It fuels me in the classroom, while playing golf, and just in my day-to-day activities. I'm always striving to be the best I can at anything I do. I have always had a strong passion and a vision for helping others and being a role model and always striving to be the best. And I just believe that by pushing and encouraging younger generations to want to become engineers will help diversify the engineering field. African Americans hold a very small population of engineers in the United States. Dr. King pushed for diversity. He pushed for freedom, equality, and I believe that was very inspirational for the whole world, even me, not even being alive during that time. As I look back and reflect on what Dr. King did, he paved the way for so many individuals and for many activists and leaders to step up at any time, especially during the summer, during the Black Lives Matter protest. This year's theme, Dream Big, Believe Big, and Act Big, not only serves as a theme, but as a daily reminder to inspire those who strive to be leaders, who want to pave the way for others. This year's theme lets us know that if we dream it and we believe it, then we can achieve it. And you just have to act on it. And I stand by this inspirational message because it can often be discouraging sometimes when you don't always get that yes. And I believe that Dr. King's leadership and his courage to keep going despite critics, despite threats, he continued to push forward. And I think we should have that same motivation, that same drive to want to achieve our goals. Adversity is all around us and will continue to be. I have faced adversity from about high school and I still face it to this day in college. And I just believe you should never give up. Keep striving to achieve those dreams. Keep aspiring to be an inspiration for others, just like Dr. King did. So there are going to be many bumps along the road, but don't give up. Dr. King didn't give up, so why should we? Thank you.
Hi there, my name is Mandy Hart. I work at Minden Medical Center as the Director of Business Development and Physician Relations. And today I'm very honored to have been asked to speak with you about how Dr. Martin Luther King's legacy coincides with my vision for our community, for Minden, for the leadership that I have within our community. And as I think about that, and as I talk through that, it was very interesting for me to come up with what I wanted to say to you all today. I've lived here since 2008, and I've loved Minden. I've loved every moment that I've lived here. I felt like family. I felt like I was born and raised here. My husband kids all the time that he's lived here 44 years, and I know more people than he does. And that was just in the first 2 years of me living here. So by that statement, you can probably guess that I'm a pretty outgoing, friendly person. I'm friends with lots of people, lots of different circles that I run in. I have friends from different socioeconomic backgrounds, from different religions, from different races, different colors. Lots of diversity in the friends that I have. And I genuinely love every relationship that I've made here in Minden, and I have way too many best friends because I love people. And by saying that, I also have said other things like one of the biggest things that I've said my whole life is that when I make friends and when I love people, that I don't see color. And what this year has taught me is that by not seeing color, I wasn't recognizing the hurt, the struggles, the injustices, and inequality that was facing some of the people that I love the most. And that is what I am taking away from this year, is that I do need to see color, that I do need to recognize those struggles, to speak up for those injustices, to learn more, to have those hard conversations with my friends. And I've had those hard conversations, and they're tough. They are tough when you realize things that you've done your whole life that you felt were good and kind and innocent, that many times they weren't unkind, but you weren't recognizing the struggle of your brother or sister in front of you that you love so much. And so this year in 2021, I want to move forward. This year's theme for this symposium is Dream Big, Act Big, Believe Big. And the way I want to use my leadership this year is to recognize color, to see struggles, to see injustices, and hopefully drive out those injustices to promote change within our community, within my 3 children, that I can live and be that example of change, that I recognize those injustices, that I recognize those inequalities, and I speak up for the people that I love. No matter what color their skin is, that I'm not just silent, that I don't sit back, and that I do have a voice, and that voice is used for good. It's used for kindness, and it's used for love, because Martin Luther King Jr., he was all about love and peacefulness and equality. And that's what we need in our community. That's what I want to lead in this world, in my home, in my community. That's what I want to exhibit to those around me. I just want to say thank you again for asking me to speak today, for asking me to give my vision of my leadership and how it coincides with that of Dr. Martin Luther King. And this year, let's dream big, act big, believe big. Let's leave a legacy.
No, we are not satisfied, and we will not be satisfied until justice rolls down like water and righteousness like a mighty stream.
Good afternoon. My name is Luther Thompson, and I was asked by Brother Michael Walker to say a little something about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. When Michael asked me, I wasn't sure what I would say, but in thinking about it, it's a moment that really something needs to be said. I think too often we forget what Martin Luther King Jr. did for all of us, not just black people. His whole motive, and I didn't think about it until I started studying my Sunday school lesson this morning. And I realized how Jesus came to make life better for everyone, not just for the Jews, not just for the Gentiles, but for everyone. And that's basically how I see Dr. King prefaced his whole life after Jesus Christ, in that he was concerned about all people. We too often think that he just was concerned about black folks, but that's not true. He was concerned about all of the downtrodden, all of those that were not getting a fair break in this country, all of those that were not getting a fair break in any country. And I say that because he was active in looking out for the poor when he went to look at the trash workers when he was killed. He was also looking at how we are treated here in this country. He was opposed to the Vietnam War, and I'm a Vietnam veteran. And I understand exactly what he's talking about. I went over to serve in Vietnam, put my life on the line for America. And when I come back and can't get what other Americans get, I'm not real happy about that. But in my younger days, I was more angry than I am now, because I realized that his message was not a message of us against them, blacks against whites, whatever. It was a message of love that Jesus Christ gave. Martin Luther King gave that same kind of love, which is in the scriptures known as agape love. That love that gives without looking for anything back. We need to love each other. And that's the only thing that's going to clear this country and the world, that we love each other. War has never been a solution. And I think about it, and I see now the situation we're in, that we've been through the last couple of weeks. And last week, when they stormed the building in Washington, and people are buying guns, and that's not a solution. And I think that a lot of people that get guns think that's a solution, have no idea what a gun can do to the human body. The body is something that God made. It's not something that we made. And it's an affront to God when we start killing each other with guns and thinking we're solving a problem. We need to look at agape love. That's what Dr. King was about, and that's what we have to be about if we ever look for any real peace. Peace was never obtained and will never be obtained, in my opinion, by violence. Thank you, Michael.
Hey guys, we're the Tims, James Tims,
Kelly Tims,
and we're here to talk about Dr. King's legacy and how he's affected us personally in our journey in life. For me personally, I feel like I relate to Dr. King, especially me being an educator, because I know he educated a lot of people on, racial diversity, different things like that. So with me being in education, I can pretty much identify with MLK. How about you?
Well, for me, also being an educator, it's one of the things of that the way that I went through school was because of Dr. King and some of the things that he fought for. Some of the liberties and privileges that I have today are because of Dr. King and the work that he put in several years ago. Well, for me also as an educator, some of the things that I'm able to do today is a privilege because of Dr. King. He fought for racial equality, social equality, and just basic human rights. So for me to be able to work in a diverse environment is awesome. For me to be able to educate a diverse group of students, that's a privilege. And so we take some of our normal day-to-day activities, and we have to realize that it's because one man decided to evoke a change amongst a nation so that we could experience the privileges that we have here today. So that's one of the ways that Dr. King has impacted my life. And also, one of the things that I think that is most influential about Dr. King is his passion. He had passion to realize that he could change the world. His passion drove him to do some things that other people thought to be bizarre or thought to be too risky. But he didn't let any of that stop him, and he did it from a strategic approach. And that's one of the reasons why he was so great and why we're remembering him decades later, because of his passion, his approach, and also his spiritual connection to Christ.
Another way Dr. King has affected us is with our own personal thing that we started called Chosen Generation. And what Chosen Generation is, pretty much me and her, we got together, get some ideas together for doing things for the community, things for our kids, things for our future. And pretty much, Dr. King was about the same thing. Everything he taught and preached was about for future generations, for future kids, for black and white kids to be together, for, just the whole world to get together. So that's one of our main goals of why we started Chosen Generation.
And if you think about it, we're still talking about Dr. King in generations to come. My grandparents were involved in civil rights and different things when Dr. King was involved in civil rights. And then it passed on to my mother and myself. And these are principles that our parents and just our mentors and everything instilled in us to make sure you remember how far you've come so that you don't repeat what has already happened. So we're just blessed to be able to have this discussion today. We're blessed to be able to talk about Dr. King and remember a man who is just phenomenal in so many ways. And so we thank you for this opportunity, and we would say Happy Martin Luther King Jr. Day.
Happy Martin Luther King Day, and we're out of school.
Hello, I'm Sheriff Jason Parker. Today, as we celebrate the great legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King, we strive to live up to and to carry out his dream that he shared with us in 1963. We shall always see the dignity and value of all people, from all backgrounds, all races and creeds, and all political views. I remain committed to not judging a person based on who they are or from where they come from, but what they may have to offer in making Webster Parish a loving and welcoming place we proudly call home. The Bible commands us to love our neighbors as ourselves, and Dr. King lived this message every day throughout his life. In 2021, please join me in doing our small part to honor Dr. King's legacy of love by caring for all and removing any hate from our hearts. Thank you. God bless.
They told us we wouldn't get here. There were those who said that we would get here only over their dead bodies. Well said. All the world today knows that we are here, that we are standing before the forces of power in the state of Alabama saying we ain't gonna let nobody turn us around.
Hello, my name is Taylor Banks and I'm from Minden, Louisiana. I'm the daughter of Daryl and Arita Banks. I'm currently a college sophomore at Dillard University in New Orleans, Louisiana. I'm a part of the women's basketball team, and I'm also a psychology major. I plan to become a sports psychologist working with college athletes. Ultimately, I plan to work with professional athletes. In this video, I will discuss Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s dream and how it has allowed me to dream big. I will also discuss how his dream has allowed me to believe big and how I will continue his dream with my actions. First, I would like to point out the type of man Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was. He was a God-fearing man. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. had a goal for everyone, black and white, to have equal opportunities. His dream has allowed me to dream big by recognizing through his words and actions that he did not fear the unknown. Instead, he decided to look it in the eye and face it. His dream of equality and opportunity for people of color has allowed me to push harder and harder every day for what I want. I have a dream of unlocking my fullest potential. And knowing that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was able to pave the way for so many opportunities, I know that this dream of mine will someday come true. One trait I admired about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was his positive faith. He believed he could do anything he put his mind to. He did not allow the naysayers to block his path to a world of equality. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, "In the end, we will remember not the word of our enemies, but the silence of our friends." Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was not a follower of the crowd, he led the crowd. Some of the people around him, including his friends, wanted to choose violence as the answer, but Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. chose positivity every time. Since I was little, I always wanted to play college basketball. Some days I thought about quitting. Some days I wasn't sure if I would make it to the next level. But every day I woke up and chose positivity as my weapon to blocking out the negative energy and thoughts, and playing college basketball became my reality. Another wise statement from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was the ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy. In other words, the real colors of a man show when he becomes the elephant of the room and has to stand out. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was not afraid to stand out. His actions have motivated me to continue his dream by holding my head high every day. I will always fight for my rights and fight for what I believe in. I will not be afraid to voice my opinion, and as a Black woman in America, I will be unafraid to speak up. In this world of cruelty and greed, this is how I choose to continue his dream with my actions. Thank you.
Greetings. My name is Shamaya Williams, and I am a native of Sibley, Louisiana. Thank you to the MLK Celebration Committee for this opportunity. When I was in the 6th grade, I remember visiting the King Center, taking a tour of Dr. King's home and the Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta, Georgia. This moment was so special to me. From reading his books to listening to his sermons, learning about his history, touring his home made it all feel so real. Dr. King believed that all men were created equal and should enjoy the same rights and privileges. One of his most famous speeches, "I Have a Dream," the touching line was that he hoped that his children would not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. Character, one of the attributes or features that makes up and distinguish an individual. I'm reminded of Romans chapter 5, verses 3 through 5. It says, "Not only so, but we also glory in our suffering, because we know that suffering produces perseverance, and perseverance, character, and character, hope. And hope does not put us to shame, because God's love has been poured out into our hearts through the Holy Spirit who has been given to us." Dr. King understood that we all see we are different. You accept color differences, affirm them, celebrate them, but do not allow them to become a barrier to human community, says Baldwin. Something that I hold dear to my heart about Dr. King was the power in his voice and the action behind the words that he spoke. Dr. King has taught me how to leave a legacy for other young people. A legacy that will keep them involved in the community. A legacy that will keep them off the streets to pursue an education and to be everything that they were born to be. Because of Dr. King, I have confidence in my own voice that I too can save and heal generations. Dr. King has helped to build bridges for African Americans to be able to attend white institutions. His struggles has allowed me the opportunity to not only be able to attend historical Black college university, Wiley College, home of the great debaters, but to also attend and to transition to a predominantly white institution where I'm able to work with other colleagues of different race. He made his dream come alive simply because he believed in it. And that is what I want to leave this with you all today, is that when you believe, you will achieve. Dr. King has inspired us all to dream bigger, to believe bigger, and to act bigger. Remember this, lightning makes no sound until its stripes.
Well, it's your lot to be a street sweeper. Set out to sweep streets like Michelangelo painted pictures.
The legacy. Dream big, believe big, and act big. Challenges us to do exactly what Dr. King did to change our communities, cities, states, and ultimately our nation. If we think big, dream big, believe big, the results will be big. Greetings, I am Solomon Bryant. I would like to thank the committee for allowing me to share my vision for our community and our nation. It is April 3rd, 1968, when Dr. King gave his historic speech, I've Been to the Mountaintop. Many of our great-grandparents, grandparents, and perhaps some of our parents were so inspired by Dr. King's big dream that they will move to action to make America a better place. I believe that Dr. King's vision is best reflected in a quote from the Mountaintop speech. I quote, "All I say to America is, be true to what you say on paper. If I lived in China or even Russia or any foreign country, maybe I could understand the denial of certain basic First Amendment privileges because they have not committed to themselves to do that over there. But somewhere I read the freedom of assembly. Somewhere I read the freedom of speech. Somewhere I read the freedom of press. Somewhere I read that the greatness of America is the right to protest for what is right. I believe that our vision must be the same as Dr. King's. We see today what Dr. King saw 73 years ago. 73 years, and we still have fellow Americans denying First Amendment rights to descendants of the same people Dr. King fought for 73 years ago. We see the same double standard which we were personified just a few days ago when domestic terrorists stormed the United States Capitol in Washington, D.C. I asked myself, how could we stray so far from where the country was when Dr. King's life was tragically taken because he dared to stand up and protest for what is right? Standing up for what is right is lawful. I read somewhere that dreaming big means having freedom to think about what we really want in our life, and never even think about all the reasons why we can't make big results happen. Today, we are challenged as never before to not only dream big, believe big, but most of all, must act big. Only then can we really see big results. No one is too old, too young, or too busy to do something to move us forward. Dr. King said, and I quote, "If you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, keep moving." As we are moving into big actions in 2021, I am ready. Are you? I challenge all of us to set higher standards for our lives and make America truly great by protesting the right for all people. Thank you, and happy Martin Luther King.
Hello, I'm Denise Edwards, your Webster Parish Assessor. Thank you for the honor and the privilege of speaking to you for this wonderful celebration and tribute to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And thank you to the leaders of this celebration for your hard work and dedication in continuing to have this celebration, especially during this pandemic time. We see you, we appreciate you, and we thank you. In thinking of this year's theme, Dream Big, Believe Big, and Act Big, I believe that these actions are so essential in our current atmosphere of our city, parish, state, and national levels. We must continue to instill the values and teachings of Dr. King in today's youth. Many things have changed in the more than 50 years since his death, but we still have such a long, long way to go, and we cannot stop now. We must support our youth and our young adults and our businesses, new and old, in their quest to dream, believe, and finally act big. And we must do more than talk about it. We must act. And we must vote into office people who will support these values. Some favorite quotes of mine from Dr. King about public service: "Our life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others?" Also, everybody can be great because anybody can serve. You don't have to have a college degree to serve. You don't have to make your subject and verb agree to serve. You only need a heart full of grace, a soul generated by love. These words speak to my heart about the kind of public servant and community leader that I want to be, and I want my office to portray. Always helping others and with a cheerful and giving heart. I want to do my part in making this world a better place than I found it. Matthew 23:11 says, "The greatest among you will be your servant." And 1 Peter 4:10 says, "Each one should use whatever gift he has received to serve others, faithfully administering God's grace in its various forms." Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was a preacher and a teacher of the Word of God, but he lived it as well as spoke it. Mr. King once said, "If a man is called to be a street sweeper, he should sweep streets even as Michelangelo painted, or Beethoven composed music, or Shakespeare wrote poetry. He should sweep streets so well that all the host of heaven and earth will pause to say, 'Here lived a great street sweeper who did his job well.'" At the end of the day, I'm not much different than that street sweeper Mr. King spoke of so eloquently. I have worked all my life at this job, and I know my job, and I appreciate my job. It allows me to serve others and help others. I will always strive to do the best for those around me and be the best possible version of myself so I can serve others and serve God also. This is the impact that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. has had on my life. His service, dedication, and love for others is essential in leadership today so that we can all help others to dream big, believe big, and act big. Thank you.
My name is Josh Beavers. I'm a teacher at Lakeside. This is my third video for this symposium that's been organized by Mr. Bridges and Ms. Fayring, Ken, and Gilbert. And I wasn't happy with either one of them. One of them I felt, after I watched it, was too much of a politician, too much trying to tell people what they want to hear and all of this. And the other one was too long. It was 10 minutes long. And so what I mean by too political and too much politician telling people what they want to hear is simply the fact of we do have problems in America, and things are not where we want them to be. But we have made progress. A testament to that, I saw the things that my grandparents said, the things that my parents said, and now the things that I say to my kids. And I can see the progression of hate diminishes, and hate may sound strong in the world, in these echo chambers that we have. However, the more you push and the more the elements become fringe, the louder they are. So the louder some of these elements on the fringe push, the alt-right, the hate movement, all those things, that just means that they're getting pushed further and further away, and they got to scream their message louder. We're doing good things in America, y'all. You got to keep the fight, because utopia will never exist. Dr. Martin Luther King knew that. He knew that you have to keep fighting. You have to keep fighting. You never can be content. You have to know that all it takes for evil to win is good men and women to do nothing. That was Dr. Martin Luther King's message. That's what we need to take away from it today as we honor him. Continue to love one another. Continue to douse hate with love. Thank you for allowing me to talk to you today.
If you can't be a pine on the top of the hill, be a scrub in the valley, but be the best little scrub on the side of the rio.
And then as a teenager in 2021, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s dream remains one I find to be very relevant today. King once described the life of the American Negro as one that was crippled by the manacles of segregation and the chains of discrimination. 57 years later today, that remains true. As a free country, we the people should be ashamed of how far we've strayed from Reverend King's hope, Reverend King's dream for social equity and love. And as political tensions grow and the pandemic worsens, conditions in our own city, our dear home, the city of Minden, we continue to grow divided and distant. And as I approach my 18th year growing up here in Minden, I hope that kids of all ages, gender, and backgrounds, whether those backgrounds be Stewart Elementary or Glenbrook, I pray that they're taught love and the value of community and acceptance, and that they're educated on the great speakers of history, such as Reverend King himself. And I pray that one day these youth, they become the leaders, and these leaders can bring our community together as one that we can be proud to be from and proud to call home. And until that day, I will strive to do my best, and I will strive to honor King's dream and legacy as best as I can. I will continue to go to marches, the very same marches that King himself spoke at. And I will leave these marches with the spirit, the great spirit that King evoked in people, and that King felt, I felt, and many other people will feel. And I will leave these places with love and hurt for the people of color I get to call my family and my friends, and I will think about every day about how their skin tones they live with on a daily basis, and I will never understand what it's like to have their skin tones. This lasting legacy that King has left us with continues to inspire my generation and many to come after to continue dreaming, believing, and serving communities as big and as well as he did. This MLK holiday and every other day, I will choose to respect others and live my life as Martin Luther King Jr. believed and as Jesus loved, and I will pray and hope for a better future and a better world.
Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is widely known as one of the greatest civil rights activists in history. He fought bravely against racism, and he fought bravely and strategically for equality and basic human rights for African Americans. As we all know, he dedicated his life to this cause. His contributions to society are unmatched by many, and his work speaks for itself. Though he fought a great fight for equality and social reform, I personally feel there is still work to be done today, as some Americans still hold on to some outdated and indecent ways of thinking, and from time to time these things are on full display in our society. The actions that took place in our nation's capital on January 6th are a glaring example of how much work there is to be done. What's even more disturbing is that some people even try to use Dr. King's name in vain. But despite all of this, I envision, as with Dr. King, a day where we can put aside our differences and open our minds and hearts to a positive change. After all, forward progress isn't possible unless we're all involved. For African Americans in particular, the best way we can honor Dr. King is to be the best versions of ourselves mentally, physically, and spiritually. All in all, when we as a society take these steps, we will inevitably reach the mountaintop that Dr. King once spoke of. Thanks for your time, and peace and blessings to all.
Good afternoon. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the MLK Jr. Committee for inviting me to participate in this forum. And I want to thank you for allowing me to share my thoughts on the impact that Dr. King had on shaping my decisions in life. As I reflect on my long and treasured life, I can unequivocally attribute Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s vision of an America where all men are judged by the content of their character rather than the color of their skin. I grew up during the Civil Rights Movement. I remember when Reverend James Farmer, a friend and co-laborer of Dr. King's, came to Minden to lead a march here. If you're wondering if I participated, yes, I did. It was an incredible and empowering experience. I grew up in Minden during the Civil Rights Movement. I grew up at a time where there was great black pride, a time where you were pushed to exceed at school, empowered to lead in the church and the community, and you were held accountable for not doing either. Dr. King once said in one of his speeches that the white man wants us to feel bad and inferior because we are black. But he reminds us that we are the wealth of the world. We should never allow anyone else to define who we are, because God created us with infinite gifts and knowledge. The African influence has touched every facet of society in every corner of the world. It is because of that strong foundation of self-worth and unequivocal value that I have lived my life, never allowing anyone to define me or limit my ability to thrive. Today, I want to share a couple of my experiences with you. At 19 years old, in the summer of 1970, I was flown to Sacramento, California, to participate in the Southern Baptist Missionary Youth Summer Missionary Program. When I walked into the convocation center, there were only 19 of us in the entire room. I shared the room with 3 young ladies. I might add that these particular group of missionaries were from the Deep South, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia. The major thing that happened in that room, I had to make a decision whether I was going to be the one that stood out or I was going to be the one who caused the ice break. So what I did was go and take I introduced myself first, walked around the room and shook everybody's hand, and everybody was good then. Everybody introduced themselves, and we chatted for a long time talking about our shared experiences, what expectations we had. And I went and took my bath and I claimed a bed. And when everybody had gotten through, Georgia, the girl from Georgia came and got in the bed with me, and there was a squabble in the room. Ah! So I started laughing. Girls, you don't have to fight over me. It's enough of me to go around. What a beautiful experience we had together in that room for 3 nights. The other experience in California was the fact that we were given a team leader who was in most instances 8 to 10 years older than we were. I can tell you that within a month's time, I had become the team leader. That's simply because I had been groomed to have self-confidence. I had been groomed to maximize my talents. I had been groomed to know when to assume leadership. The second experience was in the Miss Minden pageant. I had been going to the meetings because I was the first Black, and because my counselor was not a member of the Young Women's Service Club, she was not allowed to accompany me to the meetings in the house. But she was allowed to sit in the car and wait for me, which she did. And I can tell you that for several weeks, no one would talk to me. No one. They barely even acknowledged that I was there. But I can tell you that in that room, I sat in my seat with my shoulders squared and my head tilted in pride with a smile on my face. And I learned from that experience, don't ever let the devil know they done hurt your feelings. Amen. The next experience is at my first teaching experience in Carencro, Louisiana. I did not know that I was teaching a beautiful little white girl whose father was a Ku Klux Klan. But she wanted to sing at the Lions Club Christmas program to let her daddy know that she had discovered that she could sing, and this child could sing. So I worked with her, and shortly before the Christmas break, her mother was at the beauty shop and she hadn't finished, and she asked if I would drop her off. So I did. When we drove up in the driveway, the child saw the neighbor next door. So she jumped out and she ran in the house. And before I could ask her what happened, my principal was behind me telling me to get out the driveway and to meet him back at school. So that we had the conversation. Needless to say, I had a conversation with her father after Christmas, who had sent me a bouquet of roses. He was so touched by his daughter's beautiful voice, and I was attributed to that experience. But I told him as long as he stayed out of my way, I was going to stay out of his way, just stay out of her way with me. So I was able to do that. And the other significant thing about that is that I was nominated for Teacher of the Year, Rookie Teacher of the Year. I didn't win, but I lost to Kathleen Babineau Blanco. I was so proud of myself when I found out she was our governor. I said, oh, I lose to the best. But my final experience is after getting married and moving to Kansas, my husband worked in McPherson, Kansas. And of course, I got a job there. I became the first Black teacher in the McPherson Independent School District. They have a different system of evaluating teachers. Not only is your principal present, they have a team. Your principal, the superintendent, a master teacher, a peer teacher. It's one more. Who else? Peer teacher, master teacher, principal, the superintendent. That may have been all. May have been just 4. But they came to my room at a time where we were having a movement activity. The kids had recorded sounds in their houses like washers, the coffee pot, refrigerator, anything, even a fan, anything that could be possibly, everything has rhythm. I need to say that. So what wound up happening, it was the funniest thing. My principal thought that we were having a fight. So he came down the stairs. He stopped them. He went down the stairs first. When he got there, he realized we were in the middle of an activity. He didn't want to stop the activity. The beautiful thing about this is I received the highest rating as a new teacher in the McPherson Independent School District. So wherever I go, I thrive because Martin Luther King said, you can be judged by the content of your character rather than the color of your skin. I often say to young people, you don't have to convince anybody that you're black, but you do have to convince them that you're smart. God bless you, and let the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King continue in each of us.
Hi, I'm Philip Smart, Economic Development Director for the City of Minden and activist for civil rights. Martin Luther King Jr. Day is a day for us to look back on where we come from to where we are. It allows us to reflect on the social injustice that some have to endure just because of the color of their skin. Martin Luther King Jr. prevailed in his efforts to help realize the racial injustice and intolerance in this nation. He did so by dreaming big, believing big, and acting big. Martin Luther King Jr. laid the foundation for us, and now it's time for us to build the castle. We have made some major improvements for racial equality. Consequently, there is still room for growth. We shall not stop now, for the future is depending upon us. We must keep moving forward, no matter the challenges or obstacles that stand in our way. As in the words of Martin Luther King Jr. himself, if you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, you have to keep moving forward. So it's up to you, ladies and gentlemen. If you want to stand still in the turmoil that we have going on in our nation, in our city, in our state, and allow racial injustice to keep happening, to allow Mr. King's dream to turn into a nightmare. Or ladies and gentlemen, you can dream big and have the same dreams as Mr. King himself and see that people are judged by the content of their character and not the color of their skin. See that education is taught fairly across the board and not only in the majority white schools. That there is no more great white flights when African Americans start attending majority Caucasian schools. That you are treated fairly through the banks when you go to apply for a loan. That you are approved on credit and not on the color of your skin. That we are all judged on who we are as people and not who we are because of the color of our skin. One day we will all see racial equality because a lie cannot live forever and because the truth shall set you free. And ladies and gentlemen, we are free. We are free to dream big, believe big, act big. As we continue into 2021 together, not apart, let's focus on growth for our nation, our state, our city, our community. And please remember that God loves you as you are, no matter what you look like. Thank you.
My name is Joel Gray. I work with the Louisiana Land Bank. And last year I was given the opportunity to speak at the Martin Luther King celebration. It was an honor, and I've been given the honor of speaking today as well. Although it's COVID year again, we are doing virtual this year, and so I hope this video is heard. I feel like God's given me something to speak this year about Martin Luther King and what it means to me. This year's theme is Dream Big, Believe Big, and Act Big. And I think it's very relevant today. Martin Luther King, he believed big, he dreamed big, and he acted big. And I think over the last generations, we've had a lot of people dreaming big, we've had a lot of people believing big, but I think it's time for our generation to act big. And I think about what that means, and what does that mean, act big? What does it mean to act big when it comes to, injustices that are out there, or prejudice, or racist, or things that are beyond our control, that are not love, but hate. And I have to think about my experiences in my life. And if y'all remember anything from last year when I did my speech, I come from a family who raised me the right way to see people's character and not skin color, and not where they come from, not who they associate themselves with, but simply their character. And that started with my grandfather teaching my dad and my dad teaching me. And I think that is a big need in today's world. If you think about 3 generations, it's been 3 generations since Martin Luther King. And I think that the first generation they dreamed big. They dreamed really big. And in the second generation, they believed really big. And I think it's time for our third generation to act big. And the way that happens is instilling what was instilled in me as a young kid. It takes the parents of our generation to act big and to show their kids how to love people. Because as Martin Luther King said, darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. And hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. And if we continue to show love to people, no matter what they look like, no matter where they're from, no matter how much money they make, what side of the tracks that they're from, if we show everyone love the same way that Jesus showed love, that is how we act big and to change a generation. Because if you think about kids, and you see them play on the playground when they're young, they don't see race, they don't see background, they don't see anything other than a potential friend when they're looking at little kids. They look at a potential friend. And in my life, what I've noticed, even when I went to college, because I've had every ethnic background you can imagine when I went to college, I was just enthralled by all of the different types of people that I could meet. And I looked at every single person as a potential friend. And if we start doing that as adults, you meet somebody new, no matter what it is, they're a potential friend. Just as the kids are. And so, I think that's what love is. That's what acting big is, because it's not always easy. It's not. This is a very simple message, and Martin Luther King's message was very simple. It was simple, just love. That's all it is. Love drives out hate. And that is the only way to change this generation, what's going on, and is to do exactly what Martin Luther King did, which was love. He dreamed big, he believed big, and he acted big. And I think it's time for us to do the same. Thank you.
To say that the last few months have been challenging would be a grave understatement. Each day we find ourselves vacillating between feelings of fear and anger, anxiety, sorrow, and even disgust. Yet, despite what some might characterize as the darkest moments in our lifetime, there is still reason to dream. It was April 3rd, 1968, in Mason Temple in Memphis, Tennessee, on the eve of his assassination, that Dr. King delivered a speech popularly known today as "I've Been to the Mountaintop." And eerily, the words that Dr. King uttered so many years ago still ring true today. Hear his words. The nation is sick. Trouble is in the land. Confusion all around. But I know somehow that only when it is dark enough can you see the stars. Only when it is dark enough can you see the stars. Since moving to Washington, D.C., with the constant fog, pollution in the sky, and the brightness of the city lights, I hardly ever get to see the stars these days. It's actually one of the things that I miss most about Minden, being able to gaze into the night sky and clearly see the stars shining brightly. Stars have long been symbolic of divine guidance and protection. They are gleams of goodness and truth in a black velvety sky studded with radiant reminders of God's sovereignty. I don't know about you, but I just find myself dreaming of new possibilities and dreaming of new opportunities and new beginnings when I gaze at the night's stars. But everybody knows that those stars are most vividly seen on the darkest of nights. As we reflect on Dr. King's life and legacy, let us remember that it was in his darkest seasons that the most beautiful dreams were born. Dreams that still live on in you and me today. The dream that one day this nation would rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
Hi, my name is Olivia Sebald. I'm the Director of Children and Family Ministries here at First United Methodist Church in Minden. I am so honored to have the opportunity to share with you just a little bit about what Dr. King has meant to me. For 10 years, I served in our public school system here as a school counselor, and Dr. King always had an influence on me and on what I taught my students. As a counselor, I had the opportunity to talk about a lot of the values that he was passionate about. Now I'm in a new role. I've been here for a little over a year in ministry, and Dr. King has influenced me here as well. Specifically, he has had a lot to say about who the church really is, who the church is supposed to be. And that's something that over the past year, I've had a lot of time during the pandemic and with the events that unfolded over the summer to think about, where is the church? Where should the church be in this? And not just that, but where was the church last time? Where was the church during the civil rights movement? And I go back to this letter that Dr. King wrote. This is from the jail in Birmingham. And there's just, I can't encourage you enough, especially if you're a white Christian. He writes this, it's good for everyone, but he writes this to me, to you. I think that there's direction here for the church that we need to hear. I want to read just a little bit of it to you. He says, "There was a time when the church was very powerful, in the time when the early Christians rejoiced at being deemed worthy to suffer for what they believed. In those days, the church was not merely a thermometer that recorded the ideas and principles of popular opinion. It was a thermostat that transformed the mores of society. Whenever the Christians entered a town, the people in power became disturbed and immediately sought to convict the Christians for being disturbers of the peace and outside agitators. But the Christians pressed on in the conviction that they were a colony of heaven, called to obey God rather than man. Small in number, they were big in commitment." I love how he says, and he puts it in quotations, the disturbers of the peace. Obviously, that's what the white church had been calling Dr. King and his followers disturbers of the peace, as if that was a bad thing. And yet that's exactly what the early Christians were. There are still so many Christians, so many white moderates who say, you got to keep the peace. Keep the peace. But Dr. King talks about the peace that we're trying to keep. And he says that it's a negative peace. And it's based on a lack of tension. That's not true peace. Positive peace comes when there is justice. And that's not comfortable. And it's going to take us being like the early church and being willing to suffer. My dream is that just like Dr. King believed that the church had a role in the healing of our nation, in the healing of racial injustice, in the removal of white supremacy from our culture, to be that culture changer, to be that thermostat. That's my dream. My dream is that the church would come together, and as Dr. King mentions, it being the most segregated hour of the week, that we would step up and that we would claim what God meant for us, which is unity. He talks about how he has heard pastors saying, that we should desegregate because it is the law, but he did not hear them saying that we should do it because it is morally right or because we are brothers and sisters. And so I believe that Dr. King's dream of seeing that day come when pastors stand up and they say we have to be united, not because the government says or it's politically correct at this point, but because we're missing out. We are missing out if we're not. That I, as a white person, have something to lose by not being in community with my black brothers and sisters. That is my dream. And to dream that, the next thing is to believe big. And yeah, it takes believing big, especially in our current state of things and the way that so many of the white Christians have chosen to be quiet, have chosen to protect their business. They don't want to lose business. They don't want to lose money. They don't want to lose status. They don't want to lose friends and family. When the early church was called to get up and to walk away from all of those things, I do believe Dr. King is right. We have to be willing to go back to that sacrificial mindset and be willing to give up those things in order to stay true to who the church is called to be. And lastly, that includes acting big. And like I said, that feels hard to do in the middle of a pandemic. How do you act big? I wouldn't say that I've acted big. I wish I could say that. I will say that I have found other Christians out there at churches all over this town, white and black, who believe in this dream too, who want to see unity here and not just getting along. I don't mean that. What I mean is true community, true love, interest in each other, wanting to know our true history of how we got here, of wanting to be educated, of wanting to hear and be an ear and be an open mind to receive what it's like to be a black person in Minden, Louisiana. What it's like, what I've been taught directly and indirectly being a white person here in Minden, Louisiana, sharing those conversations together and reaching a deeper level of community and true unity, and try to be that small but committed group that Dr. King talked about and that we see in the Bible. The way our society is created, we could continue on completely segregated. No laws are needed at this point. It'll happen. He talks about it too in this letter. Time heals all things, but it doesn't correct things. Time is not going to be the only thing. It's going to take action. So reach out to some people, expand your circle, and deepen your conversations, because I do believe that unity is still within our reach. That it does feel a little bit like evil and hate have won temporarily, but we know they don't have the final say. I hope that this maybe encouraged someone, maybe just to know that you're not alone if you're out there and you've been afraid to speak up. I just want you to know that that spirit that was in Dr. King is available to you and to me as well, and we can continue his legacy together. We each have a small part to play.
We are a black gold mine, and the key that unlocks the door to these vast riches is the knowledge of who we are. I mean, who we are. This is a quote from Tony Brown. I've forgotten about him, but I used to listen to him on PBS years ago. Then I found out later that he was the coordinator of the Civil Rights March in Detroit, Michigan, June 23rd, 1963, led by Martin Luther King. Our legacy for our Martin Luther King organization is dream big, believe big, and act big. Our dream, our vision for our community is to unlock that gold mine that we have. We celebrate July the 4th. We've always done it. But then, we don't celebrate January the 1st. Mr. Tobin did. He was the principal at Webster High School. He was also a science teacher and then the president of the NAACP. Every January the 1st, we'll meet at the district building. I wear this same outfit that I have on now. I've had it for years, to that meeting to observe our Freedom Day. We celebrate, in recent years, we started celebrating Juneteenth. But Juneteenth would not have happened had it not been for January the 1st, Emancipation Day. It's just that for some reason, the Texan slaves did not get the word for 2 years. But it would not have happened had it not been for January the 1st, our Freedom Day. So this is what our community needs to begin to just shout out every day. And we have many, many important days that we can celebrate. And the 13th Amendment freed all slaves. It freed all slaves. And we need to just make it a holiday on every important event in our life. I grew up in Skylandville. My mama somehow was able to find some money to buy me some books about black people. And I've been reading it all my life. That's what we need to do. And I'm not ashamed of my history, the slavery part or nothing. Because there were some fantastic people who did fantastic things as slaves, and we thank God for them. This is our dream, our community dream, that all of us should embrace for our benefit and for our children's benefit, because we need to. It's very important. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Joy Journey Davis. I am 18 years old and a college student at Northwestern State University of Louisiana, but I am also the first African American woman to ever be crowned Miss Minden. To be completely honest, I never even imagined this for myself growing up. It never even crossed my mind. Until one day when I did some research and I realized that no African American woman had ever won the pageant before. I entered the pageant because I thought that it would be good for little black girls in our community to see someone who looked like them in that position. When I won, it took some time for me to understand the magnitude of what that meant for myself as well as the African American community in our town. But it also led me into a spell of reflection. I thought about groundbreakers like Martin Luther King Jr., Thurgood Marshall, Rosa Parks, and Ella Baker. They are the real heroes who made it possible for me to even be in this position. Their tireless work during the Civil Rights Movement reshaped the United States and created more opportunities for black people as well as other people of color. They fought for the truth, that if all people are truly created equal, as our Constitution claims, then they should be treated as equals. In 1983, Martin Luther King Jr. Day was finally approved as a federal holiday and became a state holiday in all 50 states in 2000. On MLK Day, people are encouraged to use their day off to serve their community, from providing food to those in need to taking the steps to create more discussions concerning equality and equity. Martin Luther King Jr. was a pillar of strength in the African American community. He stood for equality, justice, peace, and love. His legacy lives on in the hearts of his loved ones, but also in the hearts of people that he touched in this nation and across the world. Martin Luther King Jr.'s dream is still relevant to this day, and because of that dream, I have opportunities that my ancestors could not even imagine. His legacy lives on in every single person that believes that people should not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. If Martin Luther King Jr. were here today, he would encourage you to dream big, believe big, and act big. If you want to make change in this world, never let anyone tell you that it is not possible because of your race, ethnicity, nationality, disability, sex, sexual orientation, or religion. believe in yourself. And know that you have the strength of the groundbreakers of the past, like Martin Luther King Jr. behind you. To quote MLK, faith is taking the first step, even when you don't see the whole staircase. Do not be afraid to act toward change, but enthusiastic to create your own legacy in this world. Thank you.
Greetings. It is always a blessing to share in any capacity when it comes down to empowering our young people. I want to thank Ms. Gilbert and the committee for having me as one of the speakers this year as we celebrate the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. This year's theme, the legacy, dream big, believe big, and act big, is so befitting as we want to push our young people into that future with great vigor. When I think of vision, I think of an aspiration or a dream of a future event, something that is in front of me. But then when I think about the fact that there have been people who have had visions for us to be where we are today, we would have to turn around and look at the word vision backwards. The word vision turned backwards spells no isif. And that word means a very spiritual person who often relies on intuition for decision making. There is, and there has always been for the African American, a great struggle. We know the struggles, we've heard about them, we've seen them. Some of us have been right in the midst of those struggles. And when I think about struggle, there is no struggle like the struggle that we have had to go through. When we think about the struggle that we had to go through, we had to develop strategies to get around the roadblocks and the pitfalls that people had put in our way when others were able to just go through without any hindrances. We as African Americans had to come up with a strategy in the midst of our struggle. But that strategy in the midst of our struggle gave us strength. It gave us the strength to be who we are, gave us the strength to encourage our children and tell them those things that were out in front of them so that they too could be prepared to get around those things that the enemy would try to bring to block them from being successful. My vision for community development mirrors Dr. Martin Luther King's vision because I too was born with one foot in the struggle and one foot in the aspiration for success. But between struggle and success, there is a secret society that wants to block us, stop us, and knock us around and throw us off of our track so that we will not be able to finish and become successful. My vision mirrors Dr. Martin Luther King's vision because in my vision, I too strengthen the minds of young people so that the color of their skin does not overshadow the content of their character. My vision mirrors Dr. King's vision because I have eyes to see the struggles, the oppressions that my sisters and brothers go through. I have eyes to see the injustice that we suffer. I have eyes to see how that because of the color of our skin, we're sometimes pushed aside, treated with injustices because here it is, we had the same credit score as somebody else. So I too, with my vision, fight for those things that will help our people to be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with anybody because they too have something on the inside of them that makes them successful. My vision mirrors Dr. King's because I too have marched for the injustices that have happened, racial disparities, unjust brutality and killings. Yes, I too have seen how that making an awareness, making people aware that you see what's going on can sometimes cause them to change and become ashamed of what they're doing to us. So like Dr. King, during the boycott in Montgomery, when he stood and he told the African American people, he said, "Put your shoes on, children. Let's go marching. And don't you get weary. It's going to be a great camp meeting over in the promised land." Like the old hymnologist, the song we used to sing, "I don't feel no ways tired. I've come too far from where I started from. Nobody told me that the road was going to be easy, but I don't believe he brought me this far to leave me. So in closing, I say, dream big, believe big, and act big, because the God we serve has some great things in store for his children. God bless you, and God keep you.
My name is Tracy Campbell, and I'm honored to be asked to speak briefly about how Dr. King's vision relates to my own vision. You know, I think we all have a lot to learn from Dr. King. I was taught early in life not to judge others by their appearance, but by their character. You know, some of my closest friends didn't have the latest tennis shoes, their parents didn't drive fancy cars, they didn't live in big houses. You know, come to think of it, I didn't either. And some of my friends' skin color wasn't the same as mine. But I didn't care, because real friendship was greater than those things. If I judged my friends based on appearance, I would have missed out on some wonderful relationships. And all these years later, I feel the same way. And because my wife and I live out those beliefs today, our children have grown up with that same respect for our fellow man as we have. You know, Dr. King believed that all people were created equal and should enjoy the same rights and privileges. They shouldn't be treated as second-class citizens because of their race, creed, color, or sex. You know, his speeches, his nonviolent protests, and his bold vision inspired a nation, and it caused people to think in a way that they had never thought before. Dr. King was a man of faith, compassion, and dedication, and those three principles are the foundation of how I try and live my life. First, faith in my God, who's the creator of all things and the sustainer of my life. Number two, compassion for others, not just those who look like me, who act like me, who have the same beliefs as me, but for all people. And thirdly, dedication. Dedication to my family and to continuing to improve my community. Trying to leave my community a better place than how I found it. And I think that's key. Those are the principles that we should all be practicing daily. That's how we all can really honor the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King, by recognizing the human dignity in all the people we encounter, by treating the janitor in the same manner that you treat the CEO. That's his legacy, and that's how I hope people will one day remember me.
Hello, my name is Larry Morris Jr., and today I'm talking about Martin Luther King Jr. Martin Luther King Jr. was a civil rights leader. He believed in the ideas of separate is not equal. He convinced the nation and our country that was something that he just strongly believed in was not possible in order to have equal for everyone. Martin Luther King Jr., he believed in the ideas of the Constitution, which he called and he termed the beloved community. In my vision with Martin Luther King, just in our own community, Martin Luther King believed that everybody should be treated equal. That doesn't matter if you're black, white, male, female, or whatever your religious background is. Here in Minden, that's something that we all need to try to pick up and live by those ideas. Martin Luther King Jr., he paid the biggest sacrifice that is possible could happen, and he lost his life for this cause. But we don't want to make this as a lost cause. Today, we can pick up and do where he left off and just work hard together by working together and by trying to pick the pieces together and make it a better life for here in our small community. Martin Luther King, he was a strong believer in nonviolence. Violence is not the key to solving these problems that we have today. In today's environment and this temperature we have now, there's a lot of political things going on where people just can't put aside political sides and just come together as a human race and just make the betterment for a better man. If we can come together and do what is right, then we can live by Martin Luther King, and everything that he worked for won't be in vain. So this year, this 2001, celebrating Martin Luther King Jr.'s vision and just his birthday, let's all just come together and just have that idea that Martin Luther King Jr. had and try to just be equal, be fair, and be safe. Thank you.